Okay, welcome back everyone. So this is our second video and we'll be talking about the geologic time scale and some mass extinctions which have occurred in the past. So first off, what is the geologic time scale? So the geologic time scale is basically just a scientific way of keeping track of events which have occurred in the past. So they keep track of evolution, different branches of evolution and different extinctions which have occurred. And the geologic time scale is basically structured into four main distinctions of time. So first, which is the largest, are eons, then come eras, and then come periods, and then come epochs, which can also be called ages. Okay, so within the geologic timescale, there are basically four main eons. The three of the oldest eons can be clumped into one major eon called the Precambrian. So let's talk about each of those eons first. So the oldest of those is the Hadean eon, and basically this is when Earth just formed and was just a hot ball. And then after that, that was from around 4.5 billion years ago to around 4 billion years ago. Then comes the Archean eon, which was from around 4 billion years ago to 2.5 billion years ago. And this was when Earth basically cooled enough so that continents could form. Then after that, from around 2.5 billion years ago to around 570 million years ago, comes the Proterozoic eon, and this is when bacteria, algae, and jellyfish rose. So the three eons I just mentioned are classified into the Precambrian, and this actually comprised 80% of Earth's history because from around 4.5 billion years ago to 570 million years ago, this is around 80% of Earth's history, and not as much occurred in these eons as the next 570 million years because this is when biodiversity increased. So now let's talk about those. So the eon that we live in right now is called the Phanerozoic eon. So it has extended from 570 million years ago to the present. So within this eon, there have been three main eras: the Paleozoic, the Mesozoic, and the Cenozoic. So the Paleozoic was from around 550 million years ago to 250 million years ago. The Mesozoic was from around 250 million years ago to 50 million years ago. And the Cenozoic was from around 50 million years ago to the present. So within the Paleozoic, there are distinctions of around seven main periods. So the first of those is the Cambrian. So within the Cambrian, there's actually an event called the Cambrian explosion. And no, it was not like a meteor strike. It was actually just the massive increase in biodiversity and speciation due to many different factors. So this is when a lot of organisms rose up, such as invertebrates and trilobites. Then comes the Ordovician, which was from around 500 million years ago to 450 million years ago, and this was when bony fish rose up. So after this comes the Silurian, and this is when the earliest land animals began to form and inhabited land. Then comes the Devonian. So within the Devonian, there are the first seeded plants, and then there are also the first cartilage fish. So these are not bony fish anymore. So cartilage fish such as sharks and fish. So within the Devonian, that's basically known for being the period of the fishes. Then comes the Mississippian, which was when many crinoids, which are a type of animal, formed. Then the Pennsylvanian, which was when the first insects formed. And then the Permian, which was when the first reptiles formed. So the Permian period was actually when there was a mass extinction, but we'll be talking a little bit about that later. So so the two periods I just talked about, the Mississippian and the Pennsylvanian, so those are also referred to as the Carboniferous period, but either can be interchanged, and it's sometimes called the Carboniferous period because of the coal swamps which occurred near South America during this time. So carbon and coal is kind of related. So now the Mesozoic era. So within the Mesozoic era, there are three main periods: the Triassic, the Jurassic, and the Cretaceous. So within the Triassic period, this is when the first cycads formed, which is basically just a type of tree which has a very thick trunk. And also within the Triassic, the first dinosaurs formed. So basically, the whole Mesozoic era is dominated by dinosaurs, but they first formed within the Triassic. So after the Triassic comes the Jurassic, and you may have heard of this from the Jurassic World or Jurassic Park movies. So this is when the first birds formed, and dinosaurs also dominated during this period. And then comes the Cretaceous. So this is when modern seed-bearing plants came, and dinosaurs were still dominating during this time. So this is basically the end of the Mesozoic. So the dinosaurs ruled for around 200 million years. After this, the dinosaurs actually died in a extinction event called the KT event, which is also called the Cretaceous Tertiary event, and it's denoted as K instead of C because C can be mistaken for Cambrian. So after this comes the Cenozoic era. So within the Cenozoic era, there are only two main periods, so the Tertiary and Quaternary. So within the Tertiary period, this is when the rise of mammals occurred, such as mammoths and saber-toothed tigers and other organisms. And then the Quaternary. So the Quaternary was from around 1.8 million years ago to the present. So this is called the rise of the man period, because this is when the humans evolved and became what we are today. Okay, so the last geologic timescale distinction are epochs, and I'll not be talking specifically about them because they may be a little too specific for this video, but the one that we live in right now is called the Holocene. So we basically live in the Phanerozoic eon, the Cenozoic era, the Quaternary period, and most specifically the Holocene epoch. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about the mass extinctions. So there have basically been 5 major mass extinctions which have occurred throughout Earth's history. So the first is the late Ordovician, which occurred around 440 million years ago, and it's killed 85% of all living organisms, including the marine invertebrates such as graptolites. Then the second mass extinction was the late Devonian, which occurred around 374 million years ago, and this killed 75% of all living species, such as brachiopods and bivalves, and bivalves are just like clams, oysters, mussels, such as those. Then the third mass extinction, which is the largest, as I was alluding to earlier, the Permian, which occurred around 250 million years ago, which killed 95% of all living organisms, such as most notably trilobites. Then the fourth mass extinction was the Jurassic mass extinction. This occurred around 200 million years ago within the middle of the Mesozoic, and this killed around 80% of all living organisms such as ichthyosaurs and phytoplankton, and also many species of frogs, salamanders, and snakes. Then comes the most current mass extinction, the Cretaceous. So this is also called the KT, the KT extinction event, and this occurred around 145 million years ago, and it killed around 75% of all dinosaurs, including the non-flying dinosaurs. So the reason for the dinosaurs dying is likely believed to be a meteorite which struck, and there's evidence due to the Chicxulub crater near Mexico, and also high levels of iridium, which can be found in meteorites. Okay, thank you guys for watching. So basically, we just talked about the geologic timescale and the 5 main mass extinctions. Make sure to tune in for next week.